Welcome back to the English Daily Podcast. I am Anna, and today we are talking about a topic that affects all of us every day: how to read the news critically.
I like this topic already. News is everywhere, on our phones, on TV, in social media, and in conversation. But honestly, sometimes I do not know what to believe.
That is exactly why this topic matters. Critical reading means looking at information carefully instead of accepting it immediately. You ask questions like, who wrote this? What is the evidence? Is the source reliable? In English, reliable means you can trust it. If a story is reliable, it is supported by facts, not just opinions or rumors.
So critical reading is like being a detective. You do not just read the headline and stop there. You investigate.
Yes, and that detective mindset is very useful for English learners too. News articles often use formal vocabulary, strong verbs, and persuasive language. If you can slow down and analyze them, you improve both your reading skills and your real-world judgment. For example, if you see the word claim, it means someone says something is true, but it does not always mean it has been proven.
That is a great word to know. Claim sounds stronger than say, but weaker than prove. So when I read a headline like, a new study claims coffee makes you live longer, I should think, okay, claims are interesting, but where is the evidence?
Exactly. A headline is designed to catch your attention. That is called clickbait when the wording is exaggerated or emotional just to get clicks. Clickbait can be a problem because it may make a story seem more dramatic than it really is. A practical tip is to pause before you react. If a headline makes you angry or shocked, take a breath and read the full article before sharing it.
I definitely need that reminder. Sometimes I read a headline and immediately think, wow, that is terrible, and then I almost send it to everyone I know.
Many people do that. That is why media literacy is such an important skill. Media literacy means understanding how news, social media, and online content are made and shared. It helps you spot bias, which is when a writer or speaker favors one side. Bias is not always evil, but it means the information may not be completely balanced.
Can bias be obvious? Or is it sometimes hidden?
Both. Sometimes it is obvious because the writer uses emotional language or only interviews people from one viewpoint. Other times it is subtle, meaning it is not easy to notice. One simple trick is to compare several sources. If 3 trustworthy sources report the same basic facts, you can feel more confident. If one source says something shocking and nobody else mentions it, that is a sign to be careful.
I like that idea. Compare sources instead of trusting one article only. What makes a source trustworthy in the first place?
Good question. A trustworthy source usually has a clear author, a good reputation, accurate reporting, and evidence such as data, expert quotes, or documents. It also corrects mistakes when necessary. Another useful word is credible. Credible means believable and deserving trust. A credible journalist checks facts before publishing.
What about social media posts? Some of them spread faster than real news.
That is true, and speed is part of the problem. Social media rewards fast sharing, not careful thinking. A post can go viral very quickly. Viral means it spreads rapidly from person to person online. But something going viral does not mean it is true. In fact, misinformation often spreads because it is surprising or emotional. Misinformation is false or inaccurate information shared without correct knowledge.
So if I see something dramatic online, I should ask myself whether it is verified.
Exactly. Verified means checked and confirmed is true. When a story is verified, a reporter or organization has confirmed the facts using reliable evidence. Here is a practical method for learners and non-learners alike. First, look at the source. Second, read beyond the headline. Third, check the date. Fourth, see whether the article links to evidence. Fifth, compare it with other sources. These 5 steps can save you from misunderstandings.
The date step is important. I have seen old articles shared like they are new, and people get confused or angry for no reason.
Yes, old news can cause a lot of confusion. Context matters too. Context means the background information around a story. Without context, facts can be misleading. For example, a statistic may sound huge, but if you do not know what it compares to, you may misunderstand it. If an article says something increased by 50%, ask 50% of what?
That is such a smart question. Percentages can sound scary. So context helps me interpret the numbers correctly.
Exactly. And this connects to another useful phrase, to take something with a grain of salt. That means not to believe something completely right away. If a source is not very strong, you take it with a grain of salt and wait for more evidence. English speakers use this expression all the time in conversations about rumors or uncertain news.
I love idioms like that. So if my friend says, "I heard the company is closing next week," I can say, "Let us take that with a grain of salt until we hear it from an official source."
Perfect example. Official sources are usually the best place to start for important information. That could be a government website, a university, a hospital, or a company press release. Press release is a formal announcement from an organization. It is not always neutral, because the organization wants to present itself well, but it is still useful for checking facts directly.
I see. So different sources have different purposes. A news article explains, a press release promotes, and a social media post reacts. Knowing the purpose helps me read more carefully.
That is an excellent summary. Purpose is a key word. Ask yourself, why was this written? To inform, to persuade, to entertain, or to sell something? When you know the purpose, you understand the tone better. Tone is the feeling or attitude in the writing. A serious tone sounds different from a playful tone or a fearful tone.
Could you give an example of tone?
Sure. Imagine two articles about the same issue. One says, scientists warn that this trend could have serious consequences. The other says, this trend is the next big thing everyone should try. The first tone is cautious. The second tone is enthusiastic. Neither one tells you everything, so you need to look beyond the tone and check the facts.
That makes sense. Tone can influence my emotions before I even finish reading. So a smart reader stays calm and looks for evidence.
Yes, calm is a superpower here. Another practical tip is to check the author. Search their name if you are unsure. Have they written on this topic before? Do they have expertise? Expertise means special knowledge or skill. An expert on climate science is more credible on climate topics than someone who has no background in that field.
That sounds obvious when you say it, but people forget it all the time. Sometimes a famous person talks about medicine or politics, and suddenly everyone thinks they are an expert on everything.
Exactly, and fame is not the same as expertise. One more useful skill is to separate facts from opinions. A fact is something that can be checked. An opinion is a personal belief or judgment. If a writer says, "This is the worst decision ever," that is an opinion. If the writer says, "Unemployment rose by 2%, that is a fact that should be verifiable.
So when I read, I should ask, is this a fact, an opinion, or maybe both mixed together?
Yes, and that is one of the most valuable habits you can build. Many articles mix facts and opinions, sometimes in the same paragraph. For language learners, this is also great practice because you learn how connectors work. Words like however, therefore, meanwhile, and for example help writers structure their ideas. Recognizing those words makes reading easier.
I appreciate that. Connectors are like road signs in an article. They show me where the argument is going.
Exactly, wonderful metaphor. Let us finish with a simple real-life routine. When you open the news, choose one reliable source, read one article slowly, highlight any unfamiliar vocabulary, check the date, compare it with another source, and then ask yourself what the article is really trying to do. That routine only takes a few minutes, but it can change the way you understand the world.
That is powerful. Today we learned that critical reading means asking questions, checking the source, looking for evidence, noticing bias and tone, and not sharing information too quickly. We also learned useful vocabulary like reliable, credible, viral, verified, context, and expertise.
And there is one more thing I want to add. Be careful with charts, graphs, and numbers too. Sometimes a graph starts in the middle, so a tiny change looks huge. Sometimes the scale is missing, or the sample size is very small. Sample size means the number of people or items studied. A small sample can be interesting, but it may not represent everyone.
That is a really important tip. So a smart reader does not only ask, is this true? They also ask, how was this measured? Who was included? And what might be missing?
Exactly. Those questions turn you into a stronger reader and a smarter English user. If you remember just one thing, remember this: do not let the headline do all the thinking for you. Read carefully, compare sources, and stay curious. Thanks for listening to the English Daily Podcast, and if this episode helped you, subscribe for more practical English learning conversations.